Welcome back to part 2 of creating my Halloween Damask Spooky Opulent pattern. So in part 1 we did the full watercolor design of the ghost, the bat, the skull, the spider, and all of the little flowy leafy designs for the vintage damask style. Once those are all done and dried, please, whatever you do, make sure your paint is fully dried before you put it in your scanner. Otherwise, it's a hell of a cleanup, trust me. So then once everything's scanned, I bring it into my drawing software. I use Affinity. I've used Affinity for years. I was using it even when you still had to pay for it, and now it's free, and there really is no downside. If you are like me and you want to create more art digitally, or if you're an Adobe user and you are looking for an alternative, highly recommend Affinity. So I take my scanned image into Affinity and go through and basically just cut everything out. And I find the easiest way to cut everything out is to select all the white and the little grainy bits and that sort of thing, which sometimes it does all on its own. With watercolors, because we're not dealing with clean edges and we're dealing with a lot of color variance, sometimes you got in there and you gotta manually select a lot. So it does take a little bit of time, but I find selecting all of the white first is a lot easier than trying to select each individual image. So I'll go in, I'll remove all the white, and then what I do is I go back and I circle around every individual element and sort of cut and paste them so that they're each their own little collage piece. So that when I go to make my pattern, I can copy and rotate and edit them as necessary without it affecting any of the other elements. I want each little motif to be its own layer that is very easily manipulatable, movable, moldable, shapeable. For the most part, I don't do a ton of editing on my hand-painted elements. A lot of it has to do with either size or orientation, but for the most part, I try and maintain as close to my original painting as possible. Every so often there is some editing, especially depending on your scanner. Your scanner is not going to pick up colors the same way that you want them to, so sometimes you do some color editing. Sometimes you got to remove some dust. Sometimes there's an errant brush stroke that you miss because you're like me and you're clumsy, like you see with these spider legs. Sometimes the brush gets away from me, and that's okay. We work with what we got, we do our best, and when all else fails, we use our lovely drawing software to clean up our clumsy messes. That's part of the art. Yes, that's the excuse I'm gonna go with. Cleaning up my mess is part of my artistic practice. Okay, so we've reached the point where I am now cutting everything out. So as you can see, I'm doing a little bit more cleanup as I was removing the white. There's a few little lines that maybe got left behind, and I'm just removing those sort of single pixels because while I am clumsy, I am still a perfectionist. You'll also notice that I removed the incorrect sort of space holders for the legs on the spider and the bat wing that I no longer require because I'm going to end up making them a little bit more symmetrical. So at this point we just very carefully go through. We're also trying to get as close to the paint edge as possible while cutting these out, because again, sometimes some dust, debris, or noise doesn't get picked up in my initial sweep through of removing all the white, and so we don't want to take all that with us into our little elements here. And I go through and I do these one by one. Each one gets their own layer. Sometimes if I am dealing with a lot of elements, each layer will then get renamed to, in this instance, ghost, skull, little flowy leaf 1, little flowy leaf 2, large, small, that sort of thing. That's only if I'm dealing with patterns that are 20 plus elements, 30 plus elements, especially things that are very small. I direct you to look at my teddy bear picnic pattern for an example of dealing with a lot of elements and having to name them in order to keep track of them. Normally with things like this, I will typically have the main elements, so in this case the ghost, the skull, the bat, the spider, separate, and then I will group together all of the leaves so that they're kind of more compiled and not all loose layers within my navigator. Is cutting everything out one by one a time-consuming process? Yes. Is it worth it in order to be able to use hand-painted watercolor elements in my patterns? To me, yes. I really love how watercolor elements look in my patterns. I also really love painting by hand as much as I do love digital art and digital illustration. I really struggle to achieve watercolor texture with digital brushes. I have seen some people who paint digitally with watercolor brushes in Procreate or Affinity, and it looks phenomenal. I infinitely prefer painting by hand. That's just my preference. If you like painting digitally, you do you. Do what you want. Art's about your own practice, and who am I to tell you what to do and what makes you happy? This is where we are now making the bat slightly more symmetrical, as well as the spider. So I've taken the left wing, flipped it to become the right wing. I left a little bit of the original right wing there, and I just kind of use a eraser on a low hardness to blend everything in, and then I'll group those layers together so that it now becomes one element. Same with the spider, adding the legs to the side. We then go in, we take the spider, we duplicate it, flip it, and now we're just orienting the body and the legs so that the legs line up. I erase the rest of the spider body, and then I just have the legs there, but it now makes the whole spider look a little bit more symmetrical, a little bit more poised, and a little less messy, because making 8 legs all work together is very difficult. So this really is the easiest option, and then we play with the opacity layers to make sure that I am removing everything that does not need to be there, and making sure that everything blends together properly. Now here comes the super fun part of puzzle piecing your pattern together. Say that 10 times fast. So I have templates for a lot of my standard patterns. So that's the diamonds, scales, OGs, full drop, half drop, anything like that. I have them as saved template files that allow me to easily see my pattern being built. So I have an extended artboard, and then a guide, and then sort of a pattern repeat so that I can see in real time what the pattern's going to look like. It makes avoiding errors much easier, and I get a feel of the overall pattern rather than just a single swatch square. I know a lot of people who have templates like these for Affinity and for Procreate or Photoshop as well. Some of them are paid depending on the complexity. I know people who offer them for free. I believe the first Affinity templates I got were offered for free in an Affinity group I was a part of on Facebook. There's lots of resources out there, especially if you're learning drawing software for the first time, or if you are a more experienced designer. I can guarantee you there are things that you're doing that maybe could be streamlined, and getting resources from other lovely artists is really great. I had previously made my template, and I preset little shapes to let me know where I wanted to put the bat, where I wanted to put the ghost, the spider, and the skull. Once I have all those in place, they kind of just live there, and then I go through and I add all my little leaves. And again, we come back to symmetry is difficult. So I build piece by piece and just try and make the leaves match up in a way that, one, is aesthetically pleasing, but 2, isn't really blocking anything, and add some more dimension and texture and whimsy to the piece. I do have to the side of me while I do this, again, my sketched out plan, which all these shapes are based off of the shapes that I drew in that sketched out plan. And that kind of gives me an idea of how I want this overall pattern to look. But some decisions are made on the fly. Sometimes I get into the drawing software, I'm like, that doesn't work, or this needs something added to it, just a little bit more zhuzhing up. So there's a lot of trial and error, mixing around and combining pieces together to get the overall look that I am trying to achieve. Can this be very relaxing? Yes. Can it also be very stressful? Yes, especially when the shapes aren't doing what you want them to do. I don't know how to explain that better. Sometimes you have a vision in your head and you go to do it and things just really aren't cooperating, and so you end up going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. until you get something that you're hopefully happy with. Sometimes you gotta take a break and step away. Luckily with this pattern, I didn't have to do that. Things went relatively smoothly as I just kind of, put all these pieces together, created my little puzzle, and enjoyed the process of creating these little diamonds of leaves inspired by vintage damask patterns. I also didn't want the diamonds to be exactly the same. I felt if I was doing alternating little spooky motifs, there had to be some variance to the diamond. That isn't necessarily traditional for patterns like this, like diamond damask patterns or framed damask patterns, but we don't follow the rules here. Sometimes, you gotta know the rules to break them. So I did an alternating diamond pattern. So I had one diamond that worked out in a sort of frame, and then I created another one next to it. And then once those diamonds are connected and figured out, the rest of the pattern kind of falls into place. I feel like I'm gonna repeat this a lot, but balance and symmetry is hard. One of my favorite tools in Affinity is this aligning feature in the vector tab. It's up in the upper right hand corner, and it just, depending on which layer I select first or how many layers I'm selecting, it alters how it balances everything. But rather than sitting there for 5 minutes trying to get the edges to align, I just click it and it does it, and it's beautiful, and it makes me so happy. And if you're an Affinity user, I feel like you already know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, you are welcome. This is a lifesaver, especially for pattern design, where pixels make or break if a pattern works or not. Because if you are a pixel off on your edge line and it's not lined up properly, you gotta go back and you gotta do the whole thing, and that's not fun. So make sure you're using your balancing tools, otherwise you will be upset. For the third and fourth diamonds, I essentially just took the respective diamonds for their side counterparts, applied them to the top and bottom, but flipped them and adjusted them slightly. So again, we have just a little bit more variance. It creates a little bit visual appeal, and it creates this illusion of not really knowing where the pattern starts and stops. When you have more variation within your repeat, but you have similar elements, it's less tiring to the eye, and it feels less repetitive, even though by nature it is repetitive. And so I end up using a lot of similar motifs, but then flipping them slightly, adjusting them slightly, just to create, again, just that little bit more visual appeal, so that things don't feel as repetitive when they are by nature very repetitive. That our pattern is essentially done, it's just adding a little few extra steps. So in my templates, all of my patterns have this sort of beige peach background. It's easy to work against. If I'm working with a lot of light elements, I'll make it something a little bit darker or something a little bit more neon, but I also really don't like using solid color, non-textured backgrounds in my patterns. Yes, fabrics and surfaces have texture when you print on them. However, I make a lot of grunge patterns, I make a lot of like gothic inspired patterns, or at least I love to make them. And so I also have a lot of textures that I've created saved to add to my backgrounds very easily, like this. This one is one of my sort of like dappled grunge backgrounds. It is a repeatable background that I made, so it repeats seamlessly. I also have one that is like a half drop one that I just save for purposes like this, where I will then go through, change how I want it to appear, adjust the opacity, adjust the filter on it, and make it so that it balances out perfectly. And I'm only applying it to my center swatch because that is my export swatch. The rest of the art table is just sort of for my reference so that I can see what the overall pattern is going to look like, make sure it's seamless. But for textures and that sort of thing, I just apply them to my main export swatch. And now I'm just adjusting the background colors and some of the filters on the leaves because they didn't quite scan through as dark as I wanted them to, so we adjust that in post. And there we have the finished exported file. the finished exported design and what it looks like on fabric and wallpaper, which is so exciting. I had a lot of fun with this. I also ended up making sort of single motif versions of this pattern, so I did one with just ghosts, just skulls, just spiders, and just bats. All in all, in creating this pattern, it took me about 122 minutes, so just over 2 hours. If you love this pattern and you love this video, it would mean a lot if you let me know by either liking it or leaving me a comment. Alternatively, if you want to support this pattern and this challenge, anybody is allowed to vote on Spoonflower challenges. It's entirely open to the public. I will have a link in the caption. Also, these patterns are fully available for sale currently on Spoonflower, medium and large scale. I'll have a link to the full collection in the caption below. It would just mean a lot to see this pattern get some more support, because I love it, I loved creating it, and I hope you enjoyed this video too. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye now.